Tana tururu, ko moi nei ki hai ma, hiti ki hai ma, raka tū whakanui o taruru. Tarako, hepo, he ao kāua tia, ti hei wā, auri ora. Nei ona te mii ki a koutou, ko rau ka mai tēnei rā, mo te hui, mo te kaunere nei o Waitaha, pai ki te ia koutou i tēnei wā. Mihi atu ki a rātou, ko ia te pō, tēnei wiki, tēnei marama, tēnei tau, haere atu rā, ki tu atu o te ārai, te peturaki tia, nā reira, moi mai, oki mai, rātou, kia rātou, tātou, kia tātou, no reira, tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou, kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Cramwell, thanks me kia koe mo tō mihi whakatūwhera nei, o ko tātou nei hui, kia koe te mihi ki te rungarawa, ki te wahinaro, tēnā koe. Kia ora koutou, anau mai hara mai, ki tēnei hui o tātou. This is the 578th council meeting, so got a quorum present, that's great, and I'm happy to declare the meeting open. Kia ora. Haven't received any apologies, and just seeing if Peter's online, can't see that at the moment. We'll see, he might be late, so we'll just note that for now. Conflicts of interest, I haven't received any, no public quorums or deputations or petitions. There's no extraordinary or urgent business, and there's no notices of motion. Go to item 7 on our agenda, and that's on pages 9 to 19. These are the unconfirmed minutes of our last council meeting, the 20th of March 2024. Are there any matters of accuracy that people wanted to raise? If not, you got the resolution on the screen, so that council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of March 2024. We have a mover, Councillor Burns, secondly, Councillor Robertson. Thank you. You want to speak? I'm assuming not. All good. All those in favour, say aye. Any against? Well done. Thank you. The motion is carried. Go to item 8, and that is 8.1, sorry, on page 20 of the agenda, and that's our council resolution report. Kia ora, David. Are you going to come to the table to introduce this? Tēnā koe. Happy to take it as read, but you can introduce it if you like.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi kia koutou. Yes, I'll just take the paper as read and happy to answer any questions.
Kia ora, councillors. Is there any questions on the resolutions report? No, doesn't look like there is. Thanks, David. Thanks for that. So we've got our resolution for this. It'll come up on the screen shortly, I'm sure. And it's that we note that the status of the resolutions of previous resolutions provided in the council resolution status report May 2024. Yep, Councillor Cramwell and Councillor Ward, thank you. Jimmy, you don't want to speak to that? All good. So I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Thanks, that's carried. 8.2, this is the previous committee activities and minutes. It's on page 36 to 43. And we've got some minutes here from the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee. I'm happy if Councillor Reid wants to speak to any of this. You got anything you want to note?
Just quickly, that the meeting was went through the process, and you'll see on page 39 there was some deliberations. It was a deliberations meeting, substantive motion. Included a few things, just reorganised a few things, but basically on the bottom of page 39 and page 40 gives a list of sort of key items that came out of that in terms of the resolution, particularly agreeing to invest in new or improved indicators for the monitoring framework, looking at maintenance, deaths and serious injuries, that sort of thing for perhaps cyclists, pedestrians, and looking at mode shift. What are the indicators for there, who's moving from what form of transport to another, and basically the feedback on the plan was generally supportive of the draft Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan.
And there's two meetings in there, sorry, I didn't note that, but 28th of March and the 18th of April. And of course, there's our next item on the agenda is about one of those things that was approved at one of those meetings. So, yeah, you got a question, Councillor Korako?
Kia ora. The question is around item 5, or item 4 rather, on page 39. As staff work to understand the transport expectations of Whakatau runanga outside of Greater Christchurch. Was there any specific runanga that were talked about? Okay.
No, not that I'm aware of, but if council staff can answer that, but
Yeah, do you want to speak to that, Claire? Yeah. Okay.
No specific runanga were mentioned. It was just outside of Greater Christchurch was the feedback that we got.
I just want to just say that both Councillor Mackay and myself actually spoke to the Mayor actually Waimakariri around Tuahuriri because there was a request there to actually try and find some kind of option to return public transport actually through Tuahuriri Park, along the Tuahuriri Road basically. And we quoted the school roll more than doubling. Also the fact is that the population there is getting, well, it has been probably more co-market there now who don't drive, but also would use the bus. But kia ora, thank you. It was just an opportunity to do that.
But Councillor Korako, I think that's something maybe to bring to our LTP discussions as well, or future discussions around the PT program. So thank you. So just any other questions, sorry, of Councillor Edge or about the minutes in general? No, doesn't look like it. Cool. Well, we'll put the resolution up on the screen. That's that we note the minutes and information received in relation to the recent joint external and limited membership committees. That is the unconfirmed minutes from the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee, 28th of March and April 18th, 2024. So I have a mover, Councillor Edge, seconder, Councillor Davies. Would you like to speak to that? No? All good. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. 8.3. This sort of relates to that last item, as I said. 8.3, which is on page 44 of your agenda. This is the approval of the Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan. And Claire, would you like to come back to the table and introduce this? Thank you.
This is the Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan 2024 to 2034 that has been prepared by the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee for your approval. The committee has worked to their statutory responsibilities under Section 14 and 16 of the Act to prepare the plan, and your role under Section 18C of the Act is to approve that plan. You have the option of asking questions of that committee and clarifying, but the content of the plan sits with the committee for their consideration. And they can then, if you do ask that question, they can send it back to you for approval or not approving. And even if you do not approve it, it is still submitted to Whakatau and they treat it as approved for their purposes. So it really is a very high threshold for not accepting the plan, approving the plan at this point. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that. Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, just on that high threshold. I've got a couple of other questions as well, but just on this high threshold, that kind of almost feels like a vain threat that if we don't accept it, it's going to be accepted anyway. But so what's the point of the council as a whole accepting it anyway? Like,
just walk me through that.
So this is what the Act says. My advice would be to, in this kind of context where you don't have control over the content, is to think about things like the process that was undertaken and the level of quality, because your responsibility is to resource the functioning of the RTC through LTP discussions. So if you choose to go through the process of not approving it, what you're then signalling to Whakatau is potentially more about the quality of the process, and maybe putting it in that context. But the technical transport aspect, that is delegated to the RTC.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. It's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah.
Sort of our role as a council, obviously. I'm interested in. I've got one couple of questions, but I might talk about it later. But the timing of the mass rapid transit business case. When is that likely to fall out of this? And are we looking? And is there any way we can sort of lock that in further, more at the front end? I'm feeling like it's not committed anywhere. I want to sort of figure out how we can commit it a little bit closer to the start date, so that we don't start doing other things in this plan that might be in conflict with our budget.
So the timings and sequencings are proposed to us by the councils, and the role of the RLTP is more in the high level strategic direction and investment priorities. So the priority is improving public transport and active transport, with a particular focus on improving it in Greater Christchurch. The timings and sequencing of how all of that fits together is then worked out by Whakatau and the regional council in its public transport role, and through the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and we receive that and put that within the plan. So it's not a planning process that directs the timing and sequencing of activity.
Have you got another question, Councillor? Do you want to think about? Well, I'm not sure I can answer these questions. I feel like I'm putting you in a tricky position because you. Anyway, but the question that I have is actually around active and public transport, and I feel like the plan doesn't go far enough in terms of prioritising that, given the other priorities that the council across our region have around climate change and emissions and all that sort of stuff. And so I don't know how to answer the question because I don't know. You didn't do the priority list. This is really the first time we've had the chance to discuss this. But I feel like there's the balls that missed in that space. And so how do we potentially try and pick that up a little bit further today like that?
Yeah, it is a tension with this type of plan where you're sort of setting direction and a range of policies, but also wanting to empower local community decisions around how their rates are spent and what investments they want locally. So it is, I kind of describe it as being like the Steve Rogers with like the helicopter in the building, and you've kind of got the government policy statement and local community decision making, and you're kind of I'm Steve Rogers in the middle, kind of stitch it together. And you know, sometimes it's the government, the helicopter flying off, and sometimes it's the local, it's the council. So yeah, I mean, we don't have control over the specific activities themselves; they are proposed to us. So we can set the direction that emissions reduction is important. The headline target is signalling, you know, that this is the target that's been set that we're working towards collaboratively. Putting in policies that support it. Making an investment priority that articulates public transport and active transport, but then the timings and sequencing of activities coming in are then decided through other decision-making processes. So I think in terms of what you're looking for in the plan has done as much as it can to support communities to do that and not create barriers to it.
Yeah, thank you. Really good answer. Dion, we'll let you think about it a little more. Is there other questions from councillors? I just have one. Like just in my memory bank, we have had this previously as a draft to us. I think it was a few months back. Is that right?
Yes, and you've had briefings, yeah.
And I just, yeah, I mean, I think Claire laid it out at the start about, you know, there is a chance here that we can ask questions of the RTC. That is within our remit here if we wanted to ask further questions about this plan. So, you know, it's not entirely a done deal, so to speak, Dion. So I think that's important that Claire laid that out to us. But of course, this is the staff and the RTC recommendation actually to us on this, which of course we've been involved with as long as with all the councils in the region. But could you just clarify that again? So the process, if we did have further questions, how does that work? Just so Dion understands it.
So it's a two-step process. So you either approve it today, or you go back to the RTC and they then consider that and either decide to make changes to the plan or provide information and clarification back to you. And then you would consider approval again. Now, in terms of the statutory timeframes, that Whakatau has set the timeframe of 14th of June, where they would like the RLTP to be submitted for the funding decision. So if you decide, if you have enough concern that you want to go back to the RTC and question, then you have to put that in the context of the statutory timeframes and the risk to funding for state highways, public transport, local roads, everything that's reflected in the plan. So that's also part of why it's quite a high threshold for the level of concern where you would actually not approve today, but put it back to the RTC.
Got it, Claire. Thank you so much for that. Is there any other questions of Claire from councillors? Yep, Vicky.
Just in terms of, I can see that there was some focus on inclusion and equity in here, and I'm just sort of looking back through the changes that were made, and I just could you just explain sort of what's sort of meant by those two terms?
So inclusion is, so in terms of transport, inclusion is people who may not find it easy to travel and making it easy for them to travel. And equity is about like fair and reasonable. So it might be that they can travel, but they are traveling for a certain purpose and you want to make it equitable. So it's about inclusion is bringing everybody in, and equitable is that everybody is treated equitably.
So it covers both of the aspects in terms of sort of physical ability to access, but also the social, financial, cultural aspects as well. And that's what's the intention of those changes, because it's sort of like techy language that got certain it's understanding the full intent of what's in there.
Yeah, and again, we try not to be overly prescriptive or specific in this document because it is quite high level, and then that enables councils to make decisions around, you know, elderly, disabled, and all of those kind of inclusive and equitable issues that they need to consider and work out those trade-offs and tensions themselves.
Any other questions from councillors? Please. All good. Thanks, Claire. You can step back to the table. So thanks, councillors, for those questions. I'm actually really looking forward to the debate on this now. I'll bring the resolutions up that we've got in there, and Grant, I'm assuming you'd like to speak at some point, but are you going to move it? Is that what you're indicating? Cool. So we've got a mover from Councillor Ridge. Is there a seconder to the Councillor Southworth? Thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Ridge if you want to open the debate.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, this is an important thing for us to adopt today. I'm just going to draw people's attention to page 45, item 9, that the role of the Regional Council in adopting the RLTP is to be assured that the Regional Transport Committee has discharged its duties effectively, and these duties are set in statute and not delegated by council decision. And then item 10 at the top there, irrespective of the Canterbury Regional Council's decision to approve the plan, the Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan is provided to Whakatau by the statutory deadline. But I think discharging the duties by the committee really came from the submissions process, the hearing of submissions. So in my view, that they have discharged their duties, and it was adopted by the Transport Committee. And also maybe over the page 47, item 21, the concerning bit there is that if the plan is delayed and not submitted to Whakatau by the due date, then all transport network investment in Canterbury, that's all of Canterbury, cannot be consumed by Whakatau for the 2024-27 funding round. So it is really important, in my view, that we adopt this and get it through. What the actual money and the programs and the priority setting, even though it is in our plan, we're hoping that the priorities will go through. The determination of that in the end will be a decision by the Land Transport Authority or Funding Authority in terms of distribution of funding nationally, and then Whakatau will be asked to comment as well. So there's a few stages to go in terms of what's delivered, how much money is spent, and the priority setting, and that's really out of our control.
Thanks, Councillor Rees. Councillor Southwood, do you want to speak now, or would you like to speak at this time?
I'll speak later.
Any other councillors that would like to speak to these motions? Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, I may as well wrote some notes, but yeah, I fully understand that we are in a bit of a spot with these types of situations and not approving it. Obviously, there's $1.4 billion of co-investment that's at stake here for the first 3 years of the plan. So that's a lot of money for our region if we don't approve it. So that is weighing, that weighs on my mind. But there's four things that I was concerned about within the plan. So the first one was, and the big one, is the lack of certainty around the funding. So while the plan is an $11 billion plan over 10 years, 2/3 of it's from the National Land Transport Fund, and that leaves a $4 billion gap. And that to me is quite serious. And we don't have any control over that, but I also feel like that we have a responsibility to form our plans in a way that kind of align with our national direction in a way. The other one was the insufficient funding given to public and active transport. So obviously the strategic objective was higher in the strategic objectives than it was actually when it comes down to the operational part of the plan, which I felt there was a bit of a disconnect there. Obviously with our push for public transport, I actually thought there could have been a bit more given to active and public transport within this plan. And it can just be around ambition. I truly believe that we can have a bit more ambition in that space, because this is what's the document. And Nook raised the third point before, engagement with Whakatau Rumanga. And I just made some notes there that I was quite concerned about that this is only kind of just getting started in a way, or that it's underway. In my view, I feel that this should have been done a lot sooner, because there are substantive issues with public transport and active transport and all sorts of transport with public transport. And the fourth one that was a concern that I had was the timing of the mass rapid transit business case. This is a transformational project for Greater Christchurch, and I think it should have had a little bit more aspiration, kind of like the other point that I was saying there within this, so that it gives a bit more of a direction to our partners to say this is actually really important. It is there, which is great to see, but I do want to see these things a little bit more aspired to within these plans. So that's just my personal view. On balance, I mean, I've given the extensive work and the risks to us not adopting it. I'm likely to adopt it from a personal point of view here, but I do have these reservations, and I do hope that we can work together to address those reservations, because I think it's a relatively good plan, but those things, especially the funding, we need to get on top of, because we are falling behind in Canterbury. Sorry, and in the entire South Island. We've got to step up our game.
Got it, councillors Wicks. Well said. Any other councillors wish to speak? Yeah.
Kia ora. Just picking up on a couple of points that Councillor Sweets made. One of them, obviously, again, is coming back to the Papatūpa Runanga. What's really interesting here too is that I'm looking at the how many submissions that they actually got. One thing is that when you talk about Papatūpa Runanga, and one specifically, which is Tuahiwi, is that it doesn't, that name really, sure, it's a Papatūpa Runanga, it's an ancestral community, but you need to look inside, the makeup of the population actually of that Papatūpa Runanga and actually how many live there, because I would think at this stage with the population of Tuahiwi is that there's actually more non-Māori that are living there than Māori. And so my point is that this kind of this situation is that we kind of get branded a little bit with being a Papatūpa Runanga, and yet on top of that there is actually other non-Māori that are there. So what I'm saying is that I agree that there actually hasn't been a lot of work that's been done to actually understand the population diversities and also the new people that have actually come into that area. And so I would think that if you're a submitter and you're possibly Māori, well then you're actually locked into a Papatūpa Runanga, whereas that's not the case. And I know that you don't actually, doesn't make any difference in some ways, but other ways it does actually, because I'm actually here trying to poke for my Papatūpa Runanga or one that's within my area of kaitiakiship. So I think that's really important around the makeup of that. The other one is around the $4 million gap, and that there is a concern for me as well. But I suppose at the end of the day, sovereign funds are always the ones that you kind of tend to rely on more in some ways, depending on who's who in the political zoo. Sure.
All right, Councillor Karakia. Councillor Burns.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I'd just like to acknowledge the work that's gone into this and the people that have been involved in it. I think it's a good document. Is it everything that we've wanted to be progressive? Looking forward to our future. It's arguable one way or the other, but there are a number of things in here that I am really, I think are very good. And while in the context of emissions on page 19 of the plan, it talks about transitioning infrastructure, services, mechanisms and institutions to enable a way to live that is not less resilient on the types of vehicles and trips that we take now. Again, not only do I support it, when it comes to the money side of things, there's an awful balance about saying we want to put in something there that is aspirational, but also with an element of pragmatism with it. And I think the plan does just that. I'd certainly like to acknowledge everyone who's been involved with it.
Councillor Burns, any other councillors that wish to speak? If not, I'll go back to you, Vicky.
Yeah, so really just, it's a plan that is made through all of the territorial authorities and us in there. So there's always going to be compromise, and compromise generally reduces the degree of ambition. That just seems to be how it goes. And particularly in terms of public transport, I mean, we have quite a number of our territorial authorities who don't have any public transport at all. It was really exciting to hear at our long-term plan hearings that there was great support from those outside of Christchurch as well as Christchurch wanting to have more, keep up with the pace for public transport. Also hearing from Ashburton that they're keen to look at it. So, it's not that there isn't ambition out there, but this is a sort of compromising type of document. And then we have other things like the Greater Christchurch Partnership, where we're focusing on the mass rapid transit, and we can advocate through that mechanism for going, full head of steam on that. And so, in the context of what it is, great. I really appreciate the fact that the inclusive, accessible has been sort of ramped up in here. I think that's really important. And I get the issue around the budgets and funding. That's continuously being raised as an issue, and we are in the system that we're in, and let's hope that something changes so we can actually put forward plans with confidence that we will get central government funding to match when we make these types of decisions. But as it is, we have to put our foot forward, and then we hopefully get the support, but there's no guarantee, and we know that this is what it is. So I'm happy to support this, and it's great to get it nailed, and then let's move on to the next thing.
Sure, Councillor Southworth. Councillor Reach, do you want to have the wider reply? Yeah, happy. Sure. I'd just like to say, look, I acknowledge the points that you raised, Dion. I think you've raised some really good points, and Knox backed one of them up as well. I do note on page 22, and I knew how I'd read this before, there is some work there in terms of transport priorities for Mana Whenua, and it does mention accessibility and connectivity to Kāinga, Nohoanga and Papakainga, of course. So there has been some work done there, and I can see that there's some work done by Mahanui, and of course with the Paherenga internally. So while it might not be complete, there has been work done, and that's an ongoing discussion, I think, for us and our public transport work here at Environment Canterbury, and as well as through the GCP with Waimakiriri and Selwyn, and like Vicky said, acknowledging those other districts that are now, their districts have grown that much that public transport is an issue, and they want to look at that. So I think that's a really big challenge for the regional council as well. So just acknowledging those from our council that have worked on this, on the transport committee, including Councillor Edge and Councillor Scott, but also to all the other districts that have worked on it as well as Whakatau. So I know that it's like Vicky said, it's a big group to bring together and to get to agree on things. I have that experience through working on the regional climate action plan, and I understand how those dynamics work, similar to what Councillor Southworth said around the different sort of investment that people have in those issues, like public transport, but also climate change issues. So, but bringing it together is no mean feat, so no small feat. So I think well done to the team, and thank you, Claire, for presenting the way you did and for answering the questions really openly the way you did. So thank you. So we've got the motions on the table, moved by Councillor Edge and seconded by Councillor Southworth. Happy to put that to the vote. You can see them there, 1 to 5. I'm happy to take them all together. So we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you. So move on to 8.4, which is the Canterbury Coastal Environmental Regional Plan review of notice of motion. So that's on page 50 of your agenda. And calling up Andrew by the looks of it. Kia ora, Andrew. Welcome to the table. Happy for you to introduce, and then we'll open it up to questions from councillors. So over to you.
Kia ora, councillors. On the 14th of February this year, you passed a notice of motion asking us to undertake a scoping exercise for the Canterbury Regional Coastal Environment Plan. We've gone away and we've done that scoping exercise. We've come up with 3 options. The first option is a fastest possible option. It looks at notification in August next year. The second option is a good planning practice option. It looks at developing some new evidence to support the plan change process before looking at notification in approximately 2 years from July this year. The third option is what you currently have in your draft long-term plan. There's substantial funds that have been committed to undertaking a review of the Land and Water Plan and the Coastal Plan. Done in partnership with Whakatau, and following on from the direction that we have in the regional policy statement. The recommendation that we've put in this paper, given that the coastal plan forms an integral part of the wider regulatory framework, is that we consider this notice of motion change to the coastal plan, along with the other plan change work that we're doing as part of the LTP. That's all that I've got for an introduction. Thank you.
Andrew, any questions for Andrew from councillors? Oh, you might get off. You might get off. Yeah, I've just got one, Andrew. So I can see that we've laid out the costs for those three options in this paper, and I know that we're looking to defer it. And I'm happy if this is a conversation for another day. But my real important thing to help me understand ultimately when we look at this, if these resolutions are carried, is around the difference between the total cost of each proposal and the difference between that and what's already budgeted. Because I can understand option 3 is already budgeted, so there's no additional cost. But for the first two options, I don't understand the difference between what we might have in our kitty at the moment, so to speak, and how that would be offset by any additional costs. So over to you if you can answer it, or we leave it till we do with the LTP discussion.
Adding new planning will add to the overall budget in the LTP. For the fastest possible option, over the time that we'd spend developing that, you'd be looking at another $2.4 million. If you went with the good planning practice option, option 2, you'd be looking at another $3.6 million. Some of that cost is staff cost, and some of that cost is goods and services cost. The vast majority, whether you choose option 1 or option 2, hits in the 25-26 year, which is when we'd be sitting in a number of hearings, both on the regional policy statement and on addressing this notice of motion. That would be more than what you went out to consult with as part of the draft LTP.
Any other questions from councillors? Okay, all good. No, I think that's it. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so we've got some resolutions here that we'll bring up. So there's three main ones that are laid out here, noting that the three options that Andrew has talked to us about, A, B, and C, there, or 1, 2, and 3, if you like. And then we've got noting that options 1 and 2 would be progressed on different timeframes, depending on science, etc., and the cost we just talked about there too. And then 3, that we agree, if it's passed, to defer this decision to on the preferred option through the LTP coming up. Do I have a mover for this resolution? Yep, Councillor Robertson. Seconder? I'm happy to second it. Yep, Councillor Sunkel, go with that. So over to you, Councillor Robinson.
Can I do my wee spiel? Oh.
You've got a question?
Point of clarity. So, what is the process here regarding A, B, and C?
Hey. Yep. So where you go, Councillor Robinson?
First of all, I've asked if I can table something as well. Is that okay to table something? Okay. So it's a letter in support from someone who operates out of the area supporting this notice of motion, but it's for you to apply. I also want to bring up the letter that was also tabled at a recent meeting on the from various runanga from the concerns brought up. Is that them? No. Anyway, let me carry on. So, the 6 nautical mile buffer does not lock out iwi. It just limits indiscriminate fishing methods for preservation, and that's the reason I put through this notice of motion. I also want to refer to previous threat management plan submissions by this council of 2019 and 2020
which indicated at the time the acknowledgement of the impacts of fisheries and welcome changes through this threat management plan. It also acknowledged that set nets at the time were the greatest risk. It welcomed any other information that proved that trawl nets were as indiscriminate in creating issues in fisheries. Those who've swapped set nets are no longer the risk, trawl nets are. Trawl nets now account for 82% of all dolphin mortality. And this is just since 2019. Since September the 20th, there have been 9 trawl deaths and 3 set net deaths, which attributes to 82%. So, Council also acknowledged that if the trawl net deaths actually became an issue, they wanted to see some greater monitoring and action. And I believe this notice of motion is hopefully requesting that action. So the notice of motion is not set to erode fishing rights of iwi, as no quota will be extinguished. And it's good to know that the Far North Regional Council and the Motiti decision has dealt with this as well. There would still be a provision, of course, for customary fishing rights, as is currently the case, and is the same in the Far North Regional Council. There's been a potential confusion or overlap with existing fishing regulations. This is no longer an issue because there are hierarchies and overlaps already in a wide range of legislation. This can actually make the effectiveness of these policies and planning frameworks more robust. They can be nested and sit alongside each other. The RMA-based coastal policies that sit alongside and under or within different frameworks still create a complex set of rules governing different activities based on effects they cause. Addressing the displacement of fishing effort is exactly why this change is needed, and MPI recognised that extending the Banks Peninsula trawl restrictions way back in 2019 would push fishing pressure onto adjacent unprotected habitats. And that's why new fishing management rules were needed and developed in 2022. However, there was a backtrack which allowed the rules to be implemented, developed by fisheries itself. Now we are led by unproven and ineffective voluntary rules, which has meant that more dolphins are now being killed in Timaru and Pearces Bay waters than in the past. A regional coastal environment plan can be more comprehensive and provide overarching protection framework that integrates land and marine rules and unifies the disparate marine mammal sanctuary and fishing regulations. It will also improve fish stocks, but that's not the purpose of this. There's no evidence to show that it would make management of a taiapiri or mataitai more difficult. In fact, it will reduce the pressure on these because they are supported by the overarching policies and rules. That's all I've really got to say, and I really hope that you support my intentions. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, Councillor Sung, you want to speak now at the Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora, katoa haere. I have just one question, first of all, is that was the Hawhatupu Runanga letter, where was it tabled?
It was at Purupakuia meeting, not. I think.
Okay, so what I'm asking here is that I would believe that that letter needs to be tabled here as well, because what it does, it actually then gives sort of some credence and support to why Hawhatupu Runanga actually feels strongly about this notice of motion. So that's the first point. The next point is that I'm actually not in favour at all of supporting 1 and 2. I would find favour though in supporting number 3. Now there's the reasoning for that is that if you look at the introduction by our staff, is that I'm looking first of all at the cost, 2.4 for number 1, 3.6 for number 2. And yet, if you look at the reverting back to the original, well, then all of that has actually been budgeted. The other part with number 3 is that, and what's important for me, is that it includes a partnership with Public Excluded. And then if you go over to 58, page 58, engagement, significance, and Māori participation. So what those 3 points talk about, 33, 34, and 35, they actually talk about the significance of the Environment Canterbury's significant and engagement policy. And then what it does though, 34, it actually is about the situation around Māori fishing rights. And I do commend Councillor Robertson in actually bringing this to our attention under a notice of motion. And we all agree that we would take it to this next stage, which actually it is here now. But in doing that, we also canvassed it at Karakia, and we definitely did get a reaction there. And then there was a response letter with the reasoning behind that. And so that final point is that this is a very, very involved, complicated scenarios here, particularly around treaty settlements and te tiriti. That's why I think, kai whakahaere, it's important that that letter is tabled, because that actually does outline those points that have been highlighted in 33, 34, and 35. So I will not agree to support 1 and 2, but I would agree to support number 3. Good.
Got it, Councillor Porter. Just so everyone's clear, we're not deciding on the options today. That's not what's in front of us. What's in front of us is noting that there is 3 options that the staff have gone away and worked on and looked at, that there's different timeframes for each option and that with different costs, of course, and different levels of engagement effectively and best management practice. But the decision here is to defer this decision until after we do our deliberations on the long-term plan, so we can understand the costs and benefits of our entire planning program. So we don't have to debate of course you're welcome to raise things like that, but we don't have to debate the merits of the options today. Sorry, great to put our views forward. But the thing is, we are being asked here to agree whether we defer it or if there's other opinions, and that needs to be brought forward. Is there other speakers on this? Anyone else wish to speak? Yep, Councillor Southwood.
Yeah, I just want to make one final point. At least what I was doing here is that just noting it, but also asking that and I know we're not making a decision today, but it's just important that it's noted, particularly around the Whakatau runanga letter. And then also, it's never let a chance go by. It's just not highlight what mana whenua's view is around this. For you, thank you.
I agree to it being tabled. Sorry, I didn't even think about appropriateness. I'm sorry about that.
Yep. In terms of noting the public ruling letter, well, first of all, we do have the letter that Genevieve tabled before, so I've got that here. It's from Black Cat Cruises, so just so you know. I can hand that round if people want to look at it, but that'll be tabled and included with the minutes. In terms of the Papatopi ruling letter, I was just trying to look and remember in the paper what had been mentioned about that. I mean, if council agrees that that should be noted, I'm happy to do that. It's not a resolution, but I'm sure we can table that. And I'll go to another speaker if I've got Councillor Southwood here.
I'll speak to two, but just a question of clarification from what you just said about deferring the decision until after the long-term plan deliberations. But where I read point 3 is that it's to be debated and considered within the long-term plan, which is different. So which is correct?
I was going to ask that question too, because as I've read the resolution, and Andrew, that you might want to pay attention, because I was going to ask that, so will a decision be made, and this is sort of how we work it through, because I'm not understanding if we get to make a decision on this in another council meeting, or in a council meeting that's on the long-term plan, and that'll be, you know, specifically noted. Yeah. What is your understanding? And definitely if you want to jump in.
My understanding is that the LTP is the opportunity of this council to set the budgets going forward. We've got briefings coming up over the coming weeks around that to respond to the submissions that have been heard. And this will be incorporated into whatever budget this notice of motion, how we manage the issues that have been raised by Genevieve and by Councillor Karakia. We'll deal with those issues through whichever process you choose, whether you choose a fast option around addressing these issues, a good practice, or the best practice option. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It's just the sort of when you have a deliberations meeting and then you have final approval of the LTP, it's just how we discharge this notice of motion. That's probably what I'm interested in. Or whether you need a specific decision that discharges this notice of motion. I'm still unclear about that. And it's probably, I don't know the answer to it. I don't know if you do either, but that's just my, you know, yeah, how that's going to be done, and whether the debates during our deliberations and on the LTP will deal with it. So that's what I'm interested in. What was that? Sorry, Claire.
I can comment. That's what the suggestion 3, that it'll be in part of the discussions of the deliberations, which is around the financial. I mean, I guess that we do visit the whole financial quantum that's put into that work program. So it seems evident to me that that's what that would be.
I suppose I just read the word until in that third resolution. So until the deliberations have been done. Yeah, I agree. Yep, Councillor Reach.
Just for clarification, really, I'm looking at page 57, clause 26, and page 58, 34. Presumably, there's reference on item 26 about option 2 will enable some spatial planning to take place, whereas in option 3, it's already embedded in the draft long-term plan. So there's some sort of marine spatial planning technically undertaken. I would presume that if option 2 was decided on deliberations say, that the complex treaty settlement issues and consequences for Maori fishing rights would also be dealt with and considered at the same time. So it's not as if it's going to be left out, that actually this gets considered. Is that correct? Am I correct in my assumption?
Section 8 of the Resource Management Act requires us to have regard to the Treaty of Waitangi. Regardless of which option this council chooses to follow, we will be following Section 8 of the Resource Management Act. We have to, as part of the law that we comply with when we're developing these plans.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next speaker, and if there's no one else, it goes to John as the secondary motion. Oh, sorry.
I was going to questions going. I haven't quite worked out where we're at, but no, I just really wanted to just applaud Councillor Robinson for really passionately and continually pushing coastal issues up the agenda. I think it's really worth I think great consideration by the council. The coastal marine area that we have oversight of is the equivalent of 25% of the land area that we have council oversight of. And yet our budgets are tiny, absolutely tiny, the attention we give. And I think it's just simply because it's out of sight and out of mind. We have this beautiful turquoise seas around the Bank Peninsula and places. We see horrible green discharges as well, from Karakia when that's open. We have undoubtedly got issues that we are not fully aware of or fully off yet, and we need to get the planning right to do that, but we also need the science and the evidence there too. So I think it's really worthwhile having a really careful look at this and working out how we can make the best use of the funds we have, more funds if we need them, which I suspect we really do, and that we sort of right size and right climate to get the science and the data and evidence right, and to make sure that the plans really stand up to making a difference in this really valuable, fragile, significant area that we don't see, that we really, really want to care about. So that's what I would like to say, and I fully support this process, and I look forward to the discussion with you on time.
Look, and just I can sense that some councillors are a bit confused about where we're at. The standing orders are pretty clear that you can ask questions about fashion at any time during a debate. So that's what's been happening. But we're definitely in the debate. And so if people want to join that, then put your hand up. Otherwise, I'm going to join. So you'll get the right to reply at the end, Kennedy. Or you get the right to reply. You've already opened the debate and you get a right to reply. So is anyone else? John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I second the motion to facilitate the debate, but I am more than happy to concur with the views of Councillor Karakia and believe that deferring to a holistic decision and conversation within the long-term plan process is the way forward. Thank you.
Sorry, we're just talking about in the motion here that it refers to options 1 and 2 in the resolution 2, but of course above it's got A and B and C. But I know that in the paper it outlines option 1, 2 and 3 very clearly in the paper. But just on a technicality, it might be good to just make sure that people understand that options 1 and 2 referred to in resolution 2 refer to A and B above. So I think everyone's clear on that though. Yeah, happy to change that to A and B there so that people get it. Okay. There you go.
Oh, sorry, it's up to me now. So anyone else? Well, first of all, I just want a technicality of the option 3. It does need to be within instead of until the 4 councils. Oh, yeah, within. Did we agree on that before? So on the option 3 down the bottom, it's between coastal environment plan until we change it to within council deliberation or not? Okay. Okay. Sorry, I thought we didn't mention it before, but as the mover. Right. So my writer would. Okay. Thank you, and I accept everyone's opinions and changes of opinion in the last few weeks. But ultimately, long-term plans and annual plans allocate funds towards coastal environment every single time. And pretty much every single time it comes to deliberation, it's reviewed and pushed to the side. So that money, going back through long-term plans and annual plans over the years, has been at least $1.4 million towards the coastal plan review. So just imagine that sitting aside, that's part and parcel of what we're looking at. Whether or not it's redistributed shouldn't be an issue here, because everything else in urgency takes precedent. We've got many decisions and changes to plans coming up, but no, once again, the coastal environment is the one that gets earmarked for disposal. So just looking at the 2023-24 plan, biodiversity and biosecurity gets $25.9 million, climate change resilience portfolio, 34.4 million. Managing the coastal environment alone gets 5.5 million, which includes C4 mapping. Strategy leadership portfolio, planning and consenting and compliance as part of that, 50% of $23.67 million. Why the heck aren't we doing coastal? We're looking at a change to a species here, more than one species. It depends what the intention of the notice of motion is. It's to safeguard species unique to New Zealand's environment on the IUCN endangered list. Whether or not we choose to do it this year, next year, the next year, if we're getting 18 deaths since September, what will that look like in 3-4 years' time? So I just urge you to just actually consider our oversight responsibilities and directing every single TA in our region to do what's right. We are an environmental regulator that gives direction to other councils to do their regulatory framework too. So if we keep pushing aside funds from year to year to year, we're looking at the extinction of a species. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, I'm just seeing what we're doing here is it's not completely clean, but it's a bit tricky. And I noted this when I read the paper too. But I think that councillors are aware, but I think the public needs to be clear as well that option 1, 2 and 3 is outlined in the paper. It's just that we've got A, B and C listed in resolution 1. Yeah, Andrew.
It might be cleaner in terms of your resolutions, even though it looks a little silly to go 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3 instead of 1A, 1B, 1C. It might be clearer rather than having the updated text in 2 to change A, B and C to 1, 2 and 3.
I tend to agree. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. Yeah, all good. So let's do that just quickly. And while that's happening, I do want to acknowledge Councillor Robinson. I think, you brought this issue to us with that evidence around, the species that are impacted in our coastal environment, around the level of, work we've done to date on this. So I just really want to acknowledge the work you've done. And of course, today we're not saying yes or no. It is about acknowledging that the work's been looked at by our staff, and that now we can go forward into our deliberations and ask for further information as well and clarification, and then lay that against the rest of our planning program going forward. And I'm looking forward to that because I think it is really important. There's a lot of work that we need to look at with integrated planning process, and of course with our partners. And I acknowledge too what Nook has said, that Councillor Kortikovic has said about the feedback we've had from the Public Excluded. And so noting that what Andrew has told us about our planning process, and I know that we'll have to go and confront those issues, but I think that's something that needs to happen. So I'm looking forward to the next while in terms of our deliberations and seeing where this can fit or not, or where we will fit it, and also working with Whakatau and Public Excluded and our wider community on where we put this. So just acknowledging that. And I think I don't quite think I've got what you meant. So if I'm allowed to, I think we just mean in the brackets on 1, just put 1, 2 and 3, don't have to put 1.1. And then there would be no change required in resolution 2. Roman numerals would be fine, but Yeah, I think one in those brackets because it's referring to what's in the paper rather than what's in the resolution. So I'd just be in resolution 1, just be putting 1, 2, and 3 in those brackets on resolution 1, and then leaving resolution 2 alone. I think that's far simpler. And I get a sense around the room that most people think that too, if that's okay. And it's just for clarity's sake. And it's more about the community reading this and going, what options are they referring to? So I just don't think there needs to be any change to resolution 2. It's just change to resolution 1. Yeah. Yes, I'll just get rid of the red stuff in resolution 2. It's not needed anymore. Yeah. And the yeah, I don't think you need to comment. Yeah. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so moved by Councillor Robinson and it was seconded by Councillor Sunkel. Put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried. Thanks for everyone's patience and thanks for the team up here. Okay, 8.5. This is on page 60 of our agenda. This is in relation to our Central Biosecurity Advisory Group and a change of membership there. Lisa, welcome to the table. Yeah, over to you, sorry.
Well, it's just a fairly straightforward process report, so I'll take it as read and answer any questions that you may have.
Is there any questions from councillors in relation to this? Councillor Burns.
It's not really a question to you, well, I suppose it is. Have you discussed with Councillor East whether or not he's keen on doing this role? Peter Scott asked me a few days ago to say whether I would be prepared to take the role on. I said I would.
Yeah.
So this is a staff recommendation around a political appointment. Or is it the chair's recommendation?
On the information provided to staff by the chair, this was the only, we were only aware that one councillor was potentially interested, so we've named specifically Councillor East.
So what? Well, it's more a statement. We're at questions. You can. So is there any other questions of clarification? If not, thanks, Lisa. So, do we have a mover for this? You happy to move? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ward is happy to move, and Councillor Burns, you happy to second? Cool. Okay, so over to you, Councillor Ward, if you want to speak to it, or do you want to speak to it?
I'll keep it brief, but I think that David will be very, very suited to the job, and that's why I've nominated for this position.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. You want to speak now or at the end? You want to speak? Cool. Anyone else want to speak to this? All good. Okay, we'll put it to the. Yeah, Councillor.
So, yeah, I totally all this. I just hope that the councillor actually takes on board the public with the runanga. Whakatau as well. Good.
Councillor Karakia. Anyone else want to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you. Well done, Councillor East. Okay, on to item 8.6, page 63. And this is about the local government conference attendance. And welcome again, Lisa, to the table.
Well, this report is also a straightforward procedural one. Your expenses policy does require approval at council of attendees at the local government conference. So there's a number of recommendations here that you endorse. whoever you wish to be Environment Canterbury attendees at the LGNZ conference. Appoints one councillor as the delegate and one as the authorised person to vote on AGM remits. We'll put a copy of the remits policy as the appendix to the report. It's pretty straightforward, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from councillors? So, yep, Councillor Robinson. Yep.
Just with regards to how we get there funding wise, is it within our sort of scope, or is it funding? Sorry.
Funding wise, attendance would be funded from the general conference attendance budget, not from your professional development budget, because your policy specifically says that would be the case.
Is there any concept of how much that would cost overall? Like, because it's whether or not I'll go.
In the paper, Councillor Robinson, number 11. The fees are outlined there in number 11 if you want to look on page 55. Okay. Yeah, so Lisa, just my question is in terms of the resolutions as we've got them, we've set up before, but you're saying we have to name them, is that correct?
No, you don't need to name them today. An alternative could be, when I drafted this report, I was on the understanding I thought you were going to have a discussion amongst yourselves as to who might be interested. That may not have happened fully. So there could be an alternative to the first recommendation. Council could give, for example, the acting chair delegated authority to approve the Environment Canterbury attendees at the 2024 local government's LGNZ Super Local Conference. So you could tackle it that way.
Yep. I mean, I think it'd still be good to endorse up to 4 councillors. I think that's still a good recommendation. I'm wondering if it's just better to have a number 6 potentially that says a similar thing rather than change number 1. I mean, it just keeps our budget intact. We know that there's 4 going. I mean, we have had a discussion, and as I can see it, well, just acknowledge that Councillor Cranwell is going to be there on behalf of Marawata, and that's sorted out by them. Dion is also keen to go, and he's also been elected on the Young Elected Members Board, but that needs to be financed or sourced by us. Grant, Councillor Edge is keen to go, Councillor Robinson is keen to go, and then Chair Scott and myself are keen to go. But I would just defer to whatever. If Peter goes, I don't need to go. So I think that, in my mind, makes 4. So I think we've got it pretty much sorted. So I'm happy to do the resolutions as they are, and we could add that extra one just so we can sort it out over the next week or so. Are people okay with that? Yep. Yep. Leon?
Sorry, Chair. I just need to, for me personally, I just need a little bit of assurance either way, because I've got a lot on at that time that I need to schedule some stuff. I've got some major commitments around that time, so I need to schedule these things. Well, I need to schedule last week, but I've been waiting for this. I think that's good. So, no, I just need to know whether I'll be forced to go or not.
Yep, sorry, Dan. Yep. Yep. Well, like I said, there's 3 councillors that want to go, Dion, Grant and Genevieve. You can go, and then it'll be either Peter or myself. Does that make sense? So I'm happy to actually put that in a resolution if we need to put it in a resolution. I'm happy to do that, if that works.
For clarity's sake, that would work very well.
You can just adjourn for a second, and I'll work with Petra and Liz to get something written up, and then we'll come back. All good? Thank you. Just for 3 minutes until 2:20. Hey, kia ora, councillors. We're back a little bit early, so we'll just wait for Councillor Davies to get to a seat. So here's what we've done. We've just on screen you'll see we've changed the 4 and we've named the 3 definites, and then we'll put either Chair Scott or Deputy Chair Pauling as the attendees, and then we've just to clarify 2 and 3 so that it's clearer, just that we'll put the chair can attend the AGM and vote on the remits. So is everyone happy with that? If so, can we have a mover for that? Yep, Councillor Ward, and seconded by Councillor Sunkel. Okay, does anyone want to speak to it? I think we've had a pretty good go at it, haven't we? Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried, thank you. Okay, on to 8.7. And 8.7 is an update on our Canterbury Regional Council submissions, and I've got Emma. Kia ora, Emma. Welcome to the table. I'll hand it over to you.
Kia ora koutou. So this paper is to table 2 submissions that we've made in April on government policy, the draft GPS on land transport and the fast track approvals bill. So both of those we worked with yourselves as councillors for input, and they were signed out under the delegation of the chair. The draft GPS outlines what the government wants to achieve in the land transport and sets out the funding proposal for that work. And the fast track bill in our submission there was sort of recognising both the opportunities and risks of the legislation. The paper sets out the key points that we made in both those submissions. I'm not intending to summarise those. And the next steps is that we would expect the GPS to be finalised and in effect by July this year. The fast track consenting bill is being referred to the Environment Committee for consideration, and we did present to the committee last week, and we requested to be heard, and so that's been completed. That is my introduction to the paper. Thank you.
Emma, thank you. Any questions from councillors? Clarification? No, thank you, Emma. Cheers. So yeah, I think it's a really good introduction to this. We've seen them, we've been involved in them, and as Emma said, that was presented to the Select Committee last week during our LTP hearings as well. So that's good. Have I got a mover for the resolutions? Just Councillor Edge and Councillor Swiggs, seconded. So receive and note our submission on the GPS, and receive and note our submission on the fast track approvals bill. Any? You want to speak to it or anything? Yeah, there you go, Grant.
Yeah, just quickly, just to highlight 4 things on page 69, item 13B. That our submission also included, wanted the inclusion of the Greater Christchurch Public Transport Futures Program, including the Mass Rapid Transit Program or the detailed business case, is a committed project. So hopefully that will be adopted by the GPS. D, there on 13D, we are supportive of changes or proposed changes to the Land Transport Management Act to require GPSs to adopt a 10-year investment program rather than through the electoral cycle. And page 71, 23, the Council's submission on the draft plan states further consideration should be given to the aspirations of mana whenua. And number 27, the Council's submission points to the lack of a balanced outcomes and failure to include the Ministry of Transport's outcome framework, which includes climate and health considerations. So we made it, and they were, our submission was in similar vein to that by the South Island chairs, transport chairs, and the Merrill Forum.
Grant, thank you. Councillor Swiggs, you want to speak now or at the end?
Well, I'm just going to echo. I'm going to be a broken record on this. I'm going to echo the disappointment of the government's GPS proposal and support our letter and submission to the draft GPS. Canterbury and the South Island is missing out on a substantial amount of funding, and we are going to see it backwards decline in our infrastructure and our transport options as a result. And I do think that we need to continually hammer this point home so that the South Island and especially Canterbury and all of the other parts of our that connect our region are appropriately funded for what we need.
Councillor Swiggs, any other councillors want to speak? Yep, Councillor Southfield.
I think both submissions are really good. For the submission on the GPS, I think the focus or the drawing attention to the importance of public transport is really clearly woven in there. You know, it's couch terms, things in terms that the current government's priorities, how they, you know, the things they're keen on and try and couch things, that makes sense. I think particularly flagging the risk around the fare box recovery aspect, because we've seen how effective reducing our fares and making them flat within the context of having less than ideal service at the moment attracts people in, and we've seen a really strong continued uptake of our public transport. That will only go so far, and of course we have to make improvements in our service. Again, that's going to require funds, but to force us to change our fare box and recover, put prices up essentially, would say, or cut services, and expect us to nevertheless deliver a effective system that brings in more patronage and reduces carbon footprint is like wishful thinking. So I think we've pitched it well, and that's good to see. And on the fast track approval bill, I think paragraph 19 for me really nails it. Risking the fast track process risks reduced opportunity for public participation, reduced protection of rights and influence of mana whenua, political influence in decision making, risk delivery of council functions and services and outcomes for communities. I mean, it couldn't be blunter or clearer than that, and I think the government's heard that from quite a number of places. So I'm pleased that we were able to put something quite so clear as well.
Thank you, Vicky. Any other councillors wishing to speak on this? No, it doesn't look like it. Just to acknowledge what Grant, Dion and Vicky have said. Yes, some good points, well made, so thank you. So we'll put it to the vote. Moved by Councillor Eads, seconded by Councillor Swiggs. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to 8.8. This is regarding letters to the Minister regarding the Resource Management Act reform. Cam, you're coming to speak to this.
Good afternoon, councillors. This paper reports back to council on 2 letters sent to ministers in April regarding possible changes to be considered as part of the government's Resource Management Act reform program. The letters were sent following an invitation from the Honourable Chris Bishop, as Minister responsible for RMA reform, to provide input to him in early April. Today's council meeting is the first formal council meeting since Minister Bishop's letter was received, and the responding letters as attached from the Chief Executive and Chair were sent. I would like to draw your attention to the third attachment and provide a little further detail on this. The High Court decision that the letter relates to has significant implications for the way in which freshwater improvements are achieved, both in Canterbury and across New Zealand. Engaging with government on this issue is important. The High Court decision impacts our ability to allow for staged discharge reductions as part of consent conditions and applies to all types of discharge consents, including, for example, local council stormwater systems, irrigation schemes, vegetable processing, and private on-site wastewater systems. So the implications of the decision are broad and far-reaching. It also has significant implications for the work environment Canterbury has been doing with communities to set ambitious freshwater outcomes through Resource Management Act planning processes while providing sufficient time in which to achieve improvements. Plan Change 7, made operative just last year, is our latest plan to take this approach. And this approach is also consistent with that envisaged by the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management 2020 and the setting of targets that are ambitious and realistic to be achieved over a generation. The High Court decision compromises this approach. The letter sent to ministers outlines these implications and seeks a considered response from government. The advice does not resile from the fact that significant environmental improvements are needed and that we need to deal with the impact of cumulative effects on water quality and aquatic life. This must be done while also providing for the cultural, social and economic well-being of our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Cam. We've got any questions with clarification for Cam? Yeah, Councillor Reid. Councillor East. Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie. Sorry.
Got flattered, you think I look like Dave.
if the, so I guess my question is, if we'd known about the implications, the new interpretation, or the interpretation of section 107, which was organised action at the time Stephanie wrote the letter on the 5th of April, would you have included the recommendations around section 107, section 70 in that suggested changes to the RMA attachment 1?
So this was a very live issue at the point of which that first letter was provided to the Minister on behalf by the Chair and the Chief Executive. However, we wanted a bit more time to actually look at the implications of this. What we're finding is that it's really hard to identify exactly how many consents this will apply to, because it requires a consent by consent analysis. We know it's far-reaching, but we didn't have enough, I guess, confidence, and we wanted more analysis to draw on perspectives from across the organisation before providing advice to the Chair of the Minister.
I don't think you quite answered my question, mate. But
in fairness, Councillor, and through you, Chair, it's probably better if I answer the question than anyone else. The 5th of April letter that I sent was off the basis of the invitation. It was also on the basis on everything else that this council had decided, which is why the appendix is attached to my letter. And yes, had we had these conversations prior, my letter would include that, and my letter would include it in the context of the council having had those conversations. It is a matter of timing. I will also make the comment that we are cognizant that other parties have also sent their suggestions in to ministers over time with regard to the RMA reforms, and we wanted to ensure that we were able to highlight Canterbury's position, a decade of work, and indeed, as Cam has outlined, that importance of cumulative effects and the environmental progress that sits within those.
So thank you, Stephanie. So it's fair to say that the second letter of the 17th April was an addendum effectively to the first letter on with new information coming back, is what you're saying, and that seems to be fair.
Through you, Chair, I don't think we ever used the word addendum. In fairness, that's not the word that we used. It is a different letter sent by the Chair. It is further information to the Minister in the context of Canterbury, and it is in that way that it was issued.
Yeah, any other questions, Councillor Robinson?
Just one point of clarification, if I may. Just when it says did not provide sufficient time to discuss these matters, what is sufficient time for turnaround of the letter going out? Sorry, I'm not sure. So.
And through you, Chair, we haven't defined sufficient time, but usually would like to bring councillors up to speed on a particular issue. And typically, as you know, standard process to bring these matters to a council meeting, submission processes for a council meeting. We didn't have the opportunity to do that given there's no council meeting for us.
So what was the sufficient time? Like how much time was there to author a letter or whatever and send it off? I'm just wondering what the turnaround was, please.
Through you, Chair, we were very aware that the original letter from Mr. Bishop, Honourable Mr. Bishop, had asked for feedback by the 5th of April, I think it was, and so we were keen to provide advice up to the Chief Executive and Chair to provide this further information as soon as possible following that date.
Cam, any other questions of councillors? Thanks, Cam. You can step back. So I'll just want to open up on this. It has caused me some concern about this letter, but what I want to do is I want to, because of that, and I've heard different concerns from councillors, but I've also heard councillors are very okay with it. So what I wanted to do was consider suspending standing orders to allow councillors to speak to this before coming back to looking at the resolutions. So are people comfortable with it? And if we could we have a resolution be brought up? Well, I'll move it anyway. And hopefully I'll get a seconder. Yep, Councillor Robinson. And it's just around the standing order 3.5 that limits the number of speakers for and against. So I don't need to speak anymore. I don't know if you need to either, Councillor Robinson, if you want to.
Just regarding, oh, yeah, thank you. Yep, sorry, yes, sorry, yeah.
Those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Great. Okay. Oh, you're a no? Sorry. But did you want that noted down? So if people want to speak to it, put your hand up and then you can speak to it. Where you go, Genevieve? Oh, sorry. And just before we do, I just want to remind everybody, when you note in the paper that, yes, this is before the court. So be good to not delve into that. This is more about your thoughts on the letter, and we'll keep it to that. Thank you. Yep. Fine. Councillor Southworth.
Have the recommendations up on the board. Yeah, I was concerned when I saw this letter. I appreciate the purpose of it and the fact that it's asked about the need to get it in quickly in response to that the minister's initial request for our input to the RMA, proposed RMA changes. My disappointment is because it's couched in such overwhelmingly economic terms. There is really very little acknowledgement of the importance of our environment in this letter. It's very much about the impact on the economy, and yet our economy hasn't been impacting on our environment for such a long time. And in fact, we state in the letter, over the past 15 years, we've had a focus on setting ambitious thresholds for outcomes while enabling sustainable resource use and economic growth. I think many people would look at the improvements we've made over 15 years, which is essentially not a lot. If you look at our PWMS targets, the reporting that we do, the only target that we've really made any substantial improvement on is irrigated area. The environment has just flatlined or declined over that 15 years. We knew what we were getting into with increasing intensive agriculture. The nitrate condition of our groundwater is exactly where we could have predicted it would be. We knew there would be this lag, and now we use the lag and the time it takes and the impact on the economy to make the excuse to still continue to do things in a really slow and really unambitious way, in my view. And so to ask a government that's clearly hell-bent on prioritising the economy at every opportunity over and above the environment, is my sense of things. Admittedly, I don't do it directly, I speak to you. But to then pitch in a letter that encourages them to essentially prioritise the economy in an area that has got significant environmental impact going on in our waterways and on the coast. It's nice to know more about our coast, but anyway, it just, to me, it just is, yeah, I'm really disappointed. And had this come through council, I could have had that opportunity to express my concern, and we could have created something that suited all of us. But we didn't have that opportunity. Now, I understand that we have three options here, and I do feel like actually writing a supplementary letter where we can craft something that outlines our value for the environment, that our agricultural sector is actually dependent on the clean green brand, which is rapidly being undermined, and that clean green brand is, I think, suffering overseas, and overseas seems to be putting environment, biodiversity and climate far more ahead of what we are, and I personally feel that's a threat to our economy as well, and I think we should be thinking about that rather more carefully. So I would like to support option 2A and request a supplementary letter, and I would like to have the draft that as a council, but we all have the opportunity to input.
Cool, councillor Swick.
Sorry, just a kind of a point of order, but we do need to move something to be able to debate it. We haven't actually moved anything at the moment, so I mean maybe we should talk about what we're going to move. So maybe we had 3 options there. I mean maybe we can move 1 and 2 and A and B. I mean I'll propose to move those.
Well, I think I've already heard from Councillor Southworth that she's didn't say that, but she supported number 2. It's 2B. So I'm happy to do that. So since Councillor Southworth spoke first, I'll do that. So if you want that, I'm happy to move that 1 and 2 B is moved, and we'll debate that and we'll see where we go. You happy with that? Yep. So Councillor Southworth, you'll move that. I think Councillor Sack. Yep. Yep, you can still speak to it as you wish. Yep.
I thought the purpose of suspending standing orders so we go around and all reflect our preferred position, and then it might be appropriate to actually move option 1, 2, and 3, A, B, and C.
What I thought, but I'm happy.
Let's stick. Can we stick with that?
Just adjourn for a second. Yeah, cool. Just a couple of minutes, and I'll just confirm. Kia ora, is everyone back ready? So just had it confirmed. Look, we are able to just have an open discussion without moving something. So I'm happy to carry on in that vein. And then when we've completed that, we can come back to moving something and having a debate on that movement. So I'm happy to let it go in terms of that open discussion first, so I can get the sense of the room. So that's what I'm intending to do. So if you want to speak, let me know, and I'll put you in an order here so I can. So Ian, you want to speak? Cool. Yeah. Vicky's spoken. Greg, you want to speak? Ian. Anyone else? Nick. Genevieve. Grant. And Nick. Is that good? Oh, sorry. And John. Sorry, John. Cool. Okay, let's go, Ian. Oh, sorry, Claire. Let's go, Ian.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I support 2A, which is endorsing the letter sent to the Chair of the Ministers on the 19th of April. The reasons I do that is because the Minister invited opinion on changes to the RMA, and our Chief Executive has made it clear that had she known of the implications of the High Court decision before at the time of writing that first letter, she would have included some reference for sections 107 and 7 in that letter. And clearly they're important. And this isn't about farming. This isn't about any particular sector. It's actually about development across the wider region, which includes a lot, probably predominantly urban development. And so we need to think about that from a holistic point of view. I think in part of that ongoing discussion with the ministers over the RMA reforms, there's plenty of opportunities within the scope of what we're doing for our chair and CEO or whoever it is responsible for talking with Christopher Bishop, the minister in charge, to reflect on the roundabout, the well-rounded discussion. But to option 3, withdrawing the letter would be a nonsense. That undermines our credibility. And if you think about the scope of it, the timing of what has gone on, to me, the only thing we should be doing today is endorsing the letter that's already been sent. Because I don't think anything we achieve by sending a supplementary letter can't be achieved without a loss of mana, and that should be embedded in our ongoing discussions with the Minister and his advisors, because this is only the first gambit in the process.
Greg.
Good, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I cannot endorse the letter that went out under the chair's name. And I have much to say on a broad topic that this encompasses, but I realise that I cannot meander off a very tight line. So I will simply say I'm disappointed the letter went out, and I cannot support it being endorsed. I do agree with Councillor McKenzie that it's no point in withdrawing the letter as it's already gone, it's there. So I would support a supplementary letter.
Thanks, Greg. Jane?
Kia ora tātou, nau motu me kia koutou katoa. In a sense, I probably, if the letter under delegated authority had it come from the CEO, I probably wouldn't have an issue with the letter being sent. From the workshops or from the discussion last week on 107 and 70, which has kind of given good perspective and listening to Philip come in and then talk about those sections. It kind of clarified a few things. So if that had been under delegation from chief executive, I would have said, let it go, and then we could discuss it further in council as a whole council. Probably more of the chair having that letter sent under him, because he's meant to be representing us, so that would have been good to have a discussion. Also acknowledge that there was no council meeting in April, so it was hard to bring it to council unless we had it under emergency. And then it kind of does say in there that it didn't really meet the threshold for that, so kei te pai tēnā. In a sense, therefore I don't endorse the letter. I believe a supplementary would be welcome, and then probably further that discussion we had last week, I was online anyway, would help to clarify some of those things that we would sent through. So therefore I wouldn't withdraw it, so therefore I'll be going for number 2. Kia ora.
Got a Councillor Ward.
Hi, well, things that I think have already been said, that I do endorse the letter. If the been sent, I don't personally think we should need to send another letter. I am a wee bit annoyed that the thing has been from the entirely of agriculture. And the commissions have actually come down over the last few years. It's got to be across all sectors. And so I'm a wee bit offended by those comments.
Thanks, Councillor Ward. Canterbury.
I do not endorse the letter. And I'm not going to talk into the other side of things, the legalities and everything, but I think it's concerning to me that the letter specifically targets particular sections within the RMA that limits the legal side, and that is really concerning to me. I wish it had come to council under urgency, because the RMA as it stands is still our pivotal document, and I do not believe it was the right way, or there was always time, and when you look at the letters, there was time. Thank you.
Councillor Rees, Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I don't support endorsing the letter, but I do think there's an opportunity to provide some informed commentary under 2B as a supplementary letter to the Minister by way of explanation of what the General Councils are looking at. The letter does indicate, or it does state, that all forms of discharges into freshwater remain within the RMA. So that's a good thing to say. It also suggests that using other mechanisms such as fast track approvals would remove the ability to manage the effects across a catchment in an integrated way. We've been focused, it also identifies that we have been focused on setting ambitious but achievable outcomes over certain timeframes. Doesn't really, our land and water plan doesn't really deal with that timeframe issue very well. But the letter suggests
amendments to section 107 along the lines of economics, of justification for economic issues. And this organisation's primary function is to protect and restore and enhance the environment, securing better environmental outcomes. The letter didn't mention anything about that. And that's why I have to go with this 1.2. It's our function, it's our primary function.
No, Karakia. Oh, kia ora. So probably the road to ruin's paved with good intentions in some ways. And so when you look at you know, the letters that have been sent, and Chair Scott actually has given us a really good overview. A lot of it was around timing, and we all were actually a little bit miffed actually in some ways, but the timing issue to me is really, really important. And also the other part of it is that when you look at that timing, it was necessary to send that letter because you know, we had to sort of keep up with other councils as well. I mean, we weren't the only ones that were asked actually our opinion. If we dig down into it, every councillor here, or a number of councillors have said, oh, I wish this was in it. We should have elaborated more on that. But this is only the beginning actually of the process. So this initial letter is actually starting the process. So I actually agree with endorsing the letter. And then listening to the legal brief actually last week give you know, an overview, a legal overview of it. I don't actually. I think that if we're sending another letter to actually, as opposed to withdrawing the letter, I don't agree with withdrawing the letter because the optics on that actually going to make us all look as if we're, you know, having all kind of are not all together on this one, and we're not anyway. But at the end of the day, I'm suggesting that possibly, and it seems like the feel here is that we endorse the letter and we also send a supplementary one. I'm rather around just staying with the letter, and then let's move to the next part of the process, which actually, you know, still keeps us in the loop, and without actually having to go back and qualifying the first letter that was sent, because that'll send some signals of confusion as well. We've already got a few other signals that have gone up properly also. So anyway, I'm just staying with endorsing the letter and move on. Councillor Karakia, Claire, Councillor McCall. I don't know if the button's on, so.
Sorry, press the wrong side there. Look, I'm going to endorse the letter. I fully support both the chief executive letter that was sent and the follow-up that was sent by our chair. We vote the chair in, and they are perfectly entitled, in my opinion, to actually write such letters. We've had some discussion today around the economy. I'll just draw your attention back to part 2 of the RMA and the section 5, which is the purpose. So it's of sustainable management, I won't read the whole lot, but it is also to provide for our social, economic and cultural wellbeing. So economy is definitely important. We've had quite a bit of discussion earlier on in the agenda around how we might actually fund stuff in the long-term plan. So we can't just be looking at environment only. Like Councillor Ward, I actually find it quite offensive to suggest that there's been no environmental improvements over the last wee while in both rural and urban areas from CWMS. That is actually totally incorrect. Might not be the change and there might not be the visibility, and we've had some briefings around why we may not see changes in water quality, particularly with reference to nitrate. And I know there's more work that's actually recently, science that's actually reports that have recently become available there. So I'm really disappointed that we're actually having to have this discussion, but I would definitely prefer option 2A. I will be endorsing this. I stand by that.
Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Sankey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I have had no difficulty with the letters that have been sent and would endorse them. I do note the sentiment within the room, and I guess ultimately have no difficulty with a supplementary paper being written and expanding those views, as long as it does not tip upside down, I guess, the initial submission that has been sent to government. So it's there, the Minister has it, the community have seen the letter. Whatever we do today, tomorrow, or the next day makes no difference to what we've initially said. So more than happy to endorse 1.2. That's whichever the correct one is, but otherwise endorse the letter. And as with some of my fellow rural councillors, really disappointed that 20 years of work in the communities, what we have achieved, what we continue to achieve, and what we need to achieve is not being recognised at this table. And we wonder at times why there is this disconnect, given the massive amount of work that does happen in those communities in an attempt to right the wrongs or the environmental wrongs of the past. So I'm happy with 1 or 2. Indifferent to me. Thank you.
Councillor Sankey, any other councillors who wish to speak? Okay, so I've been listening, taking notes and having a think about it. For me, I've got some real reservations about the letter, and I'm going to be really honest about that. Partly it's about, I have no problem with us advocating for the law and for changes in the law, especially from our experience around environmental regulation, protection, etc., and all those things that we do here. But we do have an issue before the court, and I think that is some interesting and tricky ground for us. And I also think that in the context of the issues that have come up from the court around Section 107, that my read of it, as someone involved in RMA for my career, I feel that there's an important and fundamental backstop there in the RMA around the environment. And for me, that's really important. And it's important because the environment cannot speak. We have to make those decisions for it. And I think that is why it's really important. But I have no problem with questioning how that lines up with the NPS for freshwater and our attempts. And I acknowledge the work that has gone on in Canterbury in the last 10, 15 years. And I know that has been hard work from everybody, so I acknowledge that. But there may come a point where that work can't be enough and it can't be quick enough, and the environment may need to be protected. So I think that's an important discussion to have, and I'd like to see that discussion had. I didn't hear anyone that supported withdrawing the letter, so I think that option's not on the table. I've heard some saying they endorse it. I've also heard some endorsing a second letter being sent, but I haven't heard people say that that letter would flip the other one over, although that is a concern of some. To me, it makes the most sense to clarify our positions around that. And of course, what we haven't had in our papers today is that real analysis of what are those options around Section 107, around the rest of the RM reform, other than the original letter from the Chief Executive on 5th of April, which I'm really happy to see there. I'm really happy to see the Braided River definition put into that, as well as a range of other things that we have talked about around the RM review. I think there may be others as well that we can put in front of government. That is why I would like to see a supplementary letter written. I think that offers a solution to balance what we have in the room. And so that's where I'm at. And so I'd like to move that we put that forward. So I'd like to move Resolution 1 and Resolution 2B. If I had a seconder, Councillor Edge. And now we'll put that out to a debate. So if you want to speak again, you can. If you don't want to, that's okay. If you've said enough, that's okay. I think we've had a pretty good go at it. But you're more than welcome. I'm happy to speak at the end. You want to speak, Councillor Edge? Yeah, I'll take your point in a minute.
Just a point of clarification there. If we are moving 1 and 2B, if that fails, is that sort of default to 2A?
If it fails, we'd put the next one up that someone moves. Yeah. Councillor Edge, do you want to speak?
Just reinforcing what you said actually in the summary. I agree that by putting in a supplementary letter, it doesn't undermine the original letter so much, but it reinforces the statements in the letter that any national solution needs to be well considered and targeted. And Environment Canterbury is good at that process to give some informed information to the Minister so that we don't get some ad hoc change made to the RMA that will undermine the environmental outcomes that the nation wants. And so that's why I'm supporting that.
Reg, any other councillors want to speak? Councillor McKenzie.
So what I find fascinating about this discussion is that what Grant Edge is proposing look like when you look at it in the context of stormwater or sewage outlets from urban development? Are we going to say we're going to, that we're not, because we're so anti-farming and we want to stop all those activities, we're going to effectively shut down our urban development and not renew consents? Or are we going to say this is Section 107 hasn't been tested, this needs to be reviewed, which is what the letter is asking for, and it's got to be reviewed in all the cases and in which it gets tripped up. And I just don't understand what the purpose of the supplementary letter is going to be. I understand all the rhetoric around saving the environment and, wanting to gnash our teeth and whip our backs and cry crocodile tears, but I'm not convinced that we're actually focusing on the implications of the current interpretation of 107 and how saving the environment fits in with the existing consents that will be impacted by Section 107. I don't understand that.
That's your opinion, Ian. Thank you. Councillor Burns.
Yeah, really simply, it's interesting how talking about Section 5, covered the environment before we heard about the economic benefits and purpose of the Act. And it's certainly my position is not anti-farming, and I just I want to trot off into a different direction, but I won't. Kia ora.
Councillor Burns, any other? Oh, Councillor Karakia. Kia ora. What I'm hearing is that we endorse we're endorsing both letters. The one that was sent by the chair. So we agree with that because the second letter, as long as we don't undermine the first letter. Is that what I'm hearing? Well, you can ask a question. I can't answer that. Sorry, I don't know who can. Okay, so that's why I find it a bit. We're in a debate about the motion on the floor. So so that's why I'm finding it a bit difficult to understand then why we should want to send the second letter, unless the second letter is saying, oh, after further thoughts, we also want to include that, and that. That's the way I see it. Is it? Anyway, good point. Any other people want to speak to this? Any other councillors want to speak? Yeah, Councillor McGraw.
Yeah, I think basically that's crux of it for me. What would we put in a second letter? So until we see that, and I guess that's your intention, by the sounds of it, is for that to come back to the council or full council discussion. I think we could be exactly in the same position.
Got it. Anyone else on the thing? Councillor Robinson?
Just, I think it was Ian before mentioned about how it hasn't been tested. It has. It's sometimes not obvious, but it is actually a net that catches a lot of issues through the process, and it can either be declined or accepted. If you look online, there's actually a lot of cases where it has caught it and it's been declined, including Auckland Council, and recently, as we all know, down south. So it has been tested and it's worked, but we just got to make sure that we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face. What if it is something that seriously restricts us? And I just think you need to really look at it, because this is a very knee-jerk reaction to something that is there for the intention of environmental save, not otherwise. And that's what I want to say.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. Look, I think I'm going to put this to the vote. Councillor Swiggs, happy to.
Let's just go question. My clarification. I think I might be able to find that. Can we not? Is there only we can only adopt one option in this too, or can we adopt, like, for example, 2A and B?
Okay, I can answer that. Look, we had a discussion around the table. That's why I did that, to see where people are at. I don't think there's enough, or I don't know. I want to test this motion first to see if it will pass. And that's what I want to do, because I've heard some that don't endorse it. I don't know, I haven't done the exact numbers because not everyone's spoken. But that's my feeling in the room, that this is the best option of those that we've got. And the way it's written, it is, or that's the way it's written. So I'd like to put that to the vote. So that's what I'm going to do. So moved by me, seconded by Councillor Edge. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Would you like a division? Okay, fine.
Yes.
Councillor Deep, Jane, Councillor Swiggs, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor East, Councillor Sunkel, Councillor Pauline.
Yeah, it's passed by 8 to 6. So thank you. Yeah. So we can move on. Thank you. Thanks for everyone that spoke to that. Thanks for the good discussion around the table, and definitely commit to work with Stephanie and all of you on the supplementary letter. So thank you. 8.9. Agenda 106. Oh, sorry, page 106. This is a report from the chair.
Okay, sorry, what did you say the vote was?
8 to 6. Thanks, Ian.
So the process now is that there will be a supplementary letter. So who gets to, and it comes back to here, so that because within the debate, there was a number of speakers that said as long as the letter does not undermine the original letter. So how do we actually, how do we test whether it is undermining it or not?
I commit to working with everyone. Yeah. Okay. 8.9.
So is this?
Bring it back to you, David. I'll bring it back to everyone. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, 8.9 is the report from the chair. I'm going to take this as read. If there's any questions that councillors have, happy to take them, or if there's any councillors that want to speak to any items in there, I do want to mention one thing, and that is in the chair's report, you'll note that we had our trip to Kaikoura recently, and that was a really well attended and a really meaningful visit. I do want to acknowledge our staff that helped us get there. Acknowledge Councillor Burns, whose idea it was way back last year sometime to get out. Also Councillor Karakia, who supported those ideas to move around the district. And in particular, mentioned Councillor Karakia for his work in terms of how we engaged with Ngāti Kuri and Te Rūnanga o Kaikoura while we were there, as well as we had a good session with the Kaikoura District Council and their councillors as well, and the CEO. So yeah, just to acknowledge it was a really good trip. It was great to get out of Ōtautahi, to get out to parts of the region that we don't always get to. So just acknowledging that and the great work we did. So thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not so much a comment, but a question. Given the quantum of the work that Chair Scott had been doing, looking at the reports and conversations that he had been having with ministers and others around the space, I recognise, Craig, that you have talked about reorganising some sort of responsibilities. I don't expect an answer now, but I'm just looking at the quantum of those conversations and how they might, or what they might look like in the immediate future.
Definitely doing some work with the staff at the moment on looking at how to do that, as well as our committees in the interim. Of course, we've got a committee, we're looking at that as well. So, yep, definitely work with everybody. Yep, Councillor Davies.
I'll just have to move to receive the report.
Yeah, second. Councillor, each of you got a question?
I had a question. On page 108, item 18, is it possible to cite the letter to Nicola Grigg regarding concerns about implementation of the NPS highly productive land?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. We'll get that sent out. Any other questions? Cool. Oh, true. Sorry. Just got Petrarca in my ear because we've just gone over our 2 hours, so I just need to do a motion to extend. So we'll bring that up. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Nope. Councillor Karakia and Councillor Davies to move that. All those in favour, please say aye. Cool. Thank you. Okay. So back to the receipt of the chair's report. So we had Councillor Davies move it and Councillor Karakia second it. Sure, you don't want to speak to it, all good? Grant, I agree.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I do want to speak to it, and I want to acknowledge Councillor Karakia. I think the experience was all the better for clearly the hard work that you'd put in with, I'm not sure who we should call them now after the discussion we had over dinner about whakapapa, but it certainly was very good, and it was good to get out and have a look at things, everything from Dudleya and a river mouth through to our very successful, and I want to acknowledge the staff involved with the SCAR project. I thought that was exceptionally good to see, and of course that's something that the likes of the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee have talked about in relation to a lot of the sedimentation that ends up in the Opawahu Hefka River. So being actually able to see that, talk with our staff on site, and then look to take that back to one of our groups has been very rewarding. So again, and I'd like to acknowledge all of the staff that were there, especially some of the conversation. I won't look at anyone over dinner who might have been or may not have been sitting very close to me. Thank you for that.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, I've just got it. Do we do it? Put it to the vote? Not yet. No, okay, cool. Does anyone else want to speak? No, okay, we do. Councillor Robinson.
Referring back to the Kaikoura trip, I actually really enjoyed it. I hadn't looked at Kaikoura in that way before, usually on the water. So it was really good to see some of the work that's been done by staff and others, especially Pete and some of his work with the goal counts, and specifically an article written about his work and the goal counts in the latest New Zealand Geographic, which is really, really cool to see. So thank you for organising it all, and I'll go again very soon.
Got it. Kia ora. I also just want to acknowledge we went to the memorial for David Bedford, and that was really poignant. Actually, it was a wonderful way and a sad way to actually finish our visit there, but very poignant as well. And during that, I caught it off by the community, was it really did kind of make us all aware of the incredible work that David did within that community under the auspice of being the CEO of Environment Canterbury.
Thanks for acknowledging that. Yes, that was an important occasion that we were up there for, and it was great that we could be there for it. So thank you. So we'll put it to the vote. So that we receive the report from the chair. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you. So now we move to the public excluded matters. So just need a motion to go into public excluded. True. But also noting that Wendy Pine will remain after the public have been excluded. So you can see it on the screen there. Just putting in the time, it'll be roughly 3:18, 19. I'll move it. Does anyone want to second it? Yeah, Councillor Sunkel, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you.